I really am not sure if talking about the collapse of the giving pyramid is an opportunity for improvement or it may come across as a bit of fear-mongering. What are some opportunities or insights that charities should be thinking about in order to be more in control of the situation?
The average age of a new-to-file donor across the nonprofit sector today is roughly about 71 years old. But the alarming piece is when we're losing them at 10% and 23% youngest and older part of the silent generation. We've got to fill that hole somewhere. How do we find a slightly younger donor? Or are there other channels that allow us to find younger donors? And I think certainly with digital, display ads, social, influencer marketing, those are opportunities to identify younger. But I also believe that organizations are going to have to look at creating investment opportunities that might have a different measurement stick of what success is.
Such as?
I know I can find you a 65 to 70-year-old donor, much less expensive than a 45-year-old donor in direct mail. One of the questions I always like to ask people is, do you think the act of philanthropy or the act of giving money is generational? Or is it life stage? And I personally believe it's life stage. My youngest daughter has a big heart, but she doesn't have two nickels to rub together to make a significant contribution to a nonprofit of her choice. The reality is the younger generations, the Gen Z and millennials in particular, aren't going to give it the same rate as boomers and the silent generation. They're just not. And then as people postpone marriage and having children later, they're not going to have any disposable income until they're out of the house and out of college. We maybe see a shifting of disposable income moving even older as our world evolves.
My guest this week is Roger Hiyama. Roger, who's right here next to me, is one of the sharpest minds in nonprofit fundraising strategy. And he's sounding the alarm on the problem we can't ignore. The traditional giving pyramid is collapsing. There are many cracks in the base of the pyramid that we as an industry should be paying more attention to. The dependable base of small donors is shrinking. Older donors are aging out, and rising marketing costs are squeezing nonprofits from all sides. In a volatile economy and an even more unpredictable donor landscape, this conversation is a wake-up call and a strategy session rolled into one. Roger, welcome to Giving Growth.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for allowing me to be here with you.
Can you tell me how you started in the industry? How did you start to consult and work with charities?
Yeah, I actually think I'd like to take a little step back and give you a perspective of how nonprofits have helped me in my life and in my world. I was the first person in my family that attended college. I was awarded a 4-year, almost a full ride scholarship to the University of Colorado. I was on a golf caddy scholarship. But the organization called the Evans Scholarship continues to be a vibrant organization even today, where over 1,000 kids are being sent to college. It gave me the opportunity to get the education that I'm sure I would have figured out a way to do it, but it certainly made it easier. And then later on in life, my wife and I worked with two different agencies, two adoption agencies, one here in Maryland and another one in Boston, which allowed us to start our family and gave us the opportunity to adopt 3 beautiful children from China. And so knowing the importance of nonprofits overall in our world, but especially how they impacted me, is really important. I actually graduated from the University of Colorado and joined a different iteration, the earliest iteration of Wiland. It was called Wiland and Associates. And in those days, we were a traditional computer service bureau is what we called them in the old days. I was there for about 7.5 years, left for 25 years, and have now been back for almost 10 years. And the foundation of my work at Wiland in dealing with data and databases, and then moving on to another company where we did international data and databases, And then from there, I spent about 15 years really managing direct response fundraising agencies for 3 different companies, Merkle, Moore, and then also Russ Reed. And about 10 years ago, I was meeting with Phil Wiland, who has always been like a second father and a mentor to me. And I said, Phil, I really kind of miss the data side. And he said, stop. He says, come back to work for us. He says, I don't know what you'll do, but you've always been part of the family. And so about 10 years ago, I went back to work for Wiland Inc., which today is an audience development company. And we build marketing audiences for organizations in multiple different industries. I focus exclusively on the nonprofit industry. So my career has really allowed me to work with nonprofit organizations since really the very beginning. And originally on the data side and the database management side, and then very quickly on the agency side, it was building strategic frameworks based on data, so very data-driven, to help our clients grow and navigate the fundraising landscape. And then 10 years ago when I joined Wiland, Wiland is one of the is the largest nonprofit cooperative database in the country. We are very blessed to work with about 1,500 organizations. And my role at the company today is finding effective ways to use our data to help improve our clients' fundraising reach and also fundraising performance. And so that's how I'm here today.
What's Wiland's secret sauce? And I'm asking this because I have heard of Wiland. We work with you guys, but I don't actually know what makes Wiland special. And I'm sure that exists.
Well, I think with any company, it's a combination of people, technology, and in our case, data. Building products that meet the needs of an industry. And certainly within the nonprofit industry, where organizations are looking to identify new universes of audiences to acquire new donors, and also to use that same type of data, first, second, and third-party data, to help drive better performance and identifying kind of the hidden opportunities that exist within their own donor file. And so I think, but certainly if we had the best technology and the best data, it wouldn't work if we didn't have the best people that were working with our clients, strategizing with our clients, and then building out custom solutions to meet each individual client's needs.
I want to go back to a second to your experience share around your daughters, that Caddy scholarship that you had. It always fascinates me how what looks like an accident maybe, or feels like I got lucky.
Yeah.
These things that happened to me, like in my case, for example, I got into digital in 1999. I went to a random job fair, and Digitals recruited me from a data science company. I used to code. And that was my entry into digital marketing. It wasn't like something that I came up with. It sort of happened to me.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your experience with the kids and with your college experience. And obviously we both, you went to CU in Boulder, and I live in Boulder now.
Yeah. Interesting parallels. I think certain things happen for a reason. I also believe we need certain people and mentors in our life that help us navigate. And without a doubt, in my case, I've had several mentors along the way that have taught me a lot. They've opened doors for me. In fact, my scholarship to the University of Colorado was because of a gentleman that was the head golf professional. He was at the club I worked at. He was really an institution in professional golf. And it was him opening the door, providing me the opportunity to apply for a scholarship. Thankfully, I had the financial need and the grades and the recommendations. But it was really my mentor, Noble, Chalfant that really paved the way. And then as you get into business, certainly Phil Wiland as an individual who has really been a mentor, but almost a second father to me over all of these years in business, is really creating and maintaining those relationships. Things happen for a reason. Some things happen by mistake, and certainly other people help pave the way for successful opportunities as well.
So I heard this phrase last week. We can say that things happen to us or things happen for us. And when the attitude is that something happens for me, and sometimes it's something that's bad, and sometimes it's something that's wonderful. It's obviously easier to accept that something happens for me when you get a scholarship to CU.
Sure.
But if we're able to also look at the things that are hard in life happen for us and not to us, I wonder if we'll be maybe more thankful or happier in general.
Well, I think that's a good point. I mean, I feel blessed, to have a family, to work for a company that's an industry leader. They're known for certainly honesty, integrity, especially in dealing with people's data. I mean, privacy is a key driver, but also being part of a winning team and having models that build great audiences that outperform others. I mean, those things you certainly have an impact on in what you do in your job. But, it's a blessing to have been working with so many nonprofit organizations and really being able to touch and feel the mission. Now, not so much on the data side as when I was managing direct response fundraising agencies. There's nothing like going in, seeing and touching and feeling the mission. If you're lobbying on Capitol Hill to help children that have juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, that will impact you in many ways. If you happen to go to Walter Reed Medical Center and happen to have a chance to meet with soldiers who are returning from combat in different stages of recuperation, that will change your life in ways that are unimaginable. And knowing that it's nonprofit organizations who serve so many missions that our government just isn't equipped to do. Being able to touch that on a daily basis and know that you're not only doing your job, but gosh, it feels good as well.
There are many insights that you have into the industry because Wiland does have access to 1,500 charities that share data in the scope model. I'm sure that I can go to Wiland's website, download white papers. Mm-hmm. I am very curious about your perspective on a number of insights. Maybe some of them are hiding in plain sight. Maybe some of them are actually hiding somewhere.
Yeah.
And yet to you, they're self-evident. What stands out for you right now in 2025 as, maybe we can start high level, as a macroeconomic trend that's impacting giving? What's driving the trends in giving right now?
Well, I certainly believe that consumer sentiment is certainly a driver. There's been a lot of uncertainty among consumers, certainly with some of the executive orders and potential stopping of federal funding to even domestic charities beyond the USAID. It's really put our industry on its back heels. For many organizations, especially the international relief organizations, it's been devastating. When 40 to 60% of your revenues disappear virtually overnight, it's a challenge. Cutting staff, furloughing staff, trying to determine how you're going to fill that hole, those have certainly impacted some organizations more than others. But I think to the rest of the organizations in the industry, it's made us stop and pause. In one sense, I almost believe that organizations are almost frozen in place waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I will also say, I believe our economy and the foundation of our economy is still very strong. We had, some blips with the stock market as it relates to tariffs, but we still have a very strong stock market. If you compare it to October of 2022, we've gone through 2 years of over 20% growth. That certainly has helped fundraising, and we see that as evidence in that our larger donors are ones that are carrying the weight in the industry today.
So let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Giving USA will be, I think, releasing their new report in June.
That's right.
I expect that the count of donors will probably continue to decline.
Yeah.
But the revenues hopefully continue to go up, or maybe at least they'll be flat.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what will happen?
Yeah, I do. And I've been
this
tracking
trend?
these numbers really for several months. I mean, we don't get enough of our database updates in until about April, but I've been studying this back beginning in January, using 3/4 of the year from last year, looking at data trends. And the data trend that I saw was, even back as early as January, was that it looked like overall revenue for the sector was going to be up a little bit. Now, in 2023, revenue across the sector was down. First time in a long time where giving from individuals had declined. This year, we're seeing a similar trend to 2023 in that the number of donors in 2024 was about 6 to 8% less than in 23. And in 23, it was about 8% less than it was in 22. So this multiple years of declining number of donors is one of those major concerns that I have for the industry.
Well, crux, as I like to call it.
It is. But in 2023, I saw early on, and it carried on through the end of the year, although we were losing donors across every single gift dollar cohort, the revenue coming in from the $500 plus donors was really carrying the way. So the revenue from $500 plus donors was up about 8-9% in 2024, even though number of donors was down 5.8% or so. Well, if it wasn't for the oversized impact of the high dollar donors, as a sector, we'd be down again about 3 to 4%, which is what we were in 23. So the good news is we're going to see growth. The bad news is it's going to get more complicated because you're starting with about 15% fewer donors than you had 2 years ago. At the same time, most budgets are not declining, at least on the revenue side. They're staying flat, or the CFO is asking for slightly more than a year ago. Well, it's becoming more challenging to meet those needs, but this is the situation that most nonprofit organizations are in. The other challenging statistic is, even though we're losing 6 to 8% of donors overall, the the percentage of donors we're losing in the less than $25 group is almost 9 and 10%. So I believe this is really not a factor of lower dollar donors not wanting to give as much. I think the cost structures within marketing have made it very difficult to make a $10 or a $15 donor work, especially on like house file mailings. If you can acquire a $15 donor, but it's costing you 60 cents per piece to get in the mail, you need a 4% response rate before you generate your first dollar of net income, net revenue. And so I believe that many organizations, and we see this when we fulfill orders for acquisition names, many organizations have said, I haven't been able to make the low dollar donor work, and I can't afford to acquire a $15 donor. And even if I do acquire a $15 donor, I will never generate much net revenue. So they've actually started suppressing them and not chasing them. And that's a dramatic change from a few years ago.
So let me restate what I just heard and tell me what you're hearing. There are two things happening, and this is my perspective. Obviously, we talk about rich getting richer, poor getting poorer. So there is something about capacity to give from those lower value donors that just maybe decreasing.
Yes.
I don't actually know that for a fact, but that's more of a hypothesis.
Yes.
And let's just say that that is true. And that reflects your point about donors who give 500 or less, that giving is declining and the count of donors is declining.
It's declining across the board, even with $500 plus donors, it's declining.
It's declining across the board.
It is. But the revenue is increasing significantly on the higher dollar donors.
But you're also saying, which I frankly feel like I should have shared, given where I am in the industry, you're also saying that this is exacerbated by the fact that it's so expensive to acquire these donors at the base of the pyramid that they're being actively suppressed. So you almost have a double whammy effect that's contributing to the share of donors, the count of donors declining. Is that fair?
That's fair. Although I also believe that we're a resilient industry. We've had to make do with what we have for a long time. But at the same time, there are always new channels and new opportunities. I think direct mail still is probably the most cost-effective way of acquiring donor. But one of the challenges is that direct mail today, because of the way the industry was built and the data bias that exists within existing promotion files, we're having a difficult time expanding our reach beyond a traditional direct mail audience. But this is where the opportunity exists for other channels like digital, SMS, and text, peer-to-peer texting. Certainly, a lot of organizations have done very well in acquiring new donors that are monthly sustainers in channels like face-to-face or street canvassing. I don't think doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result is a place where we can afford to be. And I think it's going to be a challenge for organizations to be able to step back a little bit and take a more objective look at the situation and determine where can we save, where can we test new things, where should we be focusing more of our marketing spend, and where should we be focusing less or no marketing spend. This is something that the industry has gone through over the years, but like the bread and butter for a long, long time has been direct mail. And it still is and I still think, the most effective acquisition channel, but it's becoming more difficult because of the cost structures to find low dollar donors at an allowable acquisition cost.
What's unique about the non-for-profit industry is that, in my experience, unlike with other industries, this idea of the giving pyramid is something that everyone is familiar with, right? I think it truly is, in my experience, because I spend most of my experience in a for-profit industry, with for-profit industries. It's because of the structure of this idea that I need to connect with humans because they are giving me $10, $20, $100,000 a year. And you don't really have a consumer product where you would consistently give that much money per year to a company, even with cars. We don't buy cars every year. So charities have developed this stratified approach to these value segments, right? With kind of one-to-one on top and kind of one-to-many on the bottom. And really the middle is actually often a little bit abandoned in my experience. In your opinion, maybe first, do you believe that the giving pyramid model is true? Do you believe that this idea of I need to acquire mass donors, they will become mid and major, and they're kind of moving from the bottom to the top, is that true, or are there other flavors to this model?
Well, I think there are certainly different flavors. Like if you consider the donor pyramid and the bottom being the lower dollar donors, and maybe the next rung up being the sustainers, and then mid-level, major, and then legacy gifts as the pyramid. Certainly, you can jump that first level of the pyramid by using other channels. I mean, people that are using DRTV, face-to-face, they've kind of jumped that first pyramid by rung of the ladder by acquiring monthly givers at acquisition. But there's no doubt that the upper levels of the pyramid are fed from the bottom up. And so the challenging part today and moving forward is if that bottom of the pyramid shrinks, it's going to make the top of the pyramid shrink as well, right? Because there are going to be fewer feeders into the pyramid, if you will. Yet at the same time, if you have a declining file, and even, let's say if somebody lost 10% of their donors last year, well, if you lose 10% of your file and your active file then needs to produce at least the 10% more from your existing 90%.
Probably more than 10%.
Exactly.
Mathematically speaking.
And that's where the challenge is. But I also think this is where the opportunity is as well.
And what are some of those? Because I want to talk about the opportunities. Because when I think about the shrinking pyramid and I think about the bottom getting thinner, and by the way, the numbers that you're mentioning, they're significant.
Yeah, they
Losing 6-7% consistently year over year.
Yeah.
It compounds. That very quickly grows into double digits.
Yeah.
And just from my perspective, honestly, sometimes I really am not sure if talking about the collapse of the giving pyramid is an opportunity for improvement, or it may come across as a bit of fear mongering. And I definitely am always wired for things can be better. I am very much a glass half full kind of a person.
Yeah, me too.
I think it helps me deal with just the world, and it's almost like a defense mechanism, but I can't stop but be glass half full. So when I think about being glass half full, but also being brutally honest about this is what's happening. Glass half full, brutal perspective on reality. What are some opportunities or insights that charities should be thinking about in order to be more in control of the situation?
Yeah. So, when I think of the overall fundraising landscape, it's definitely changing, right? One of the things that I didn't mention is that the number of older donors is declining at a more significant rate than other generational cohorts. So, for example, the silent generation, which is really kind of between 80, 85 to 95, those donors, the older ones in that cohort, they're dropping off by 21, 22% year over year. The younger ones in that cohort are dropping off by about 10% year over year. In terms of revenue, that silent generation represents about 25% of the donors and about 24% of revenue. That silent generation literally is attriting, they're natural attrition. Many of them are dying. But I also believe because of a lot of the uncertainty in the economy, older donors are concerned about outliving their nest egg. Certainly, if they're living in an assisted living facility or a retirement facility, those costs dramatically are impacting them. But I also believe that many of those people have wealth in maybe not cash. And so, back in the day, we used to talk about the silent period where donors would stop giving cash gifts, but they were certainly looking at their legacy giving. If we have an older file, we can choose to complain and lament, or we can brainstorm about what can we do about it. And the average age of a new to file donor across the nonprofit sector today is roughly about 71 years old. For all donors, it's about 73 years old. And there are certain sectors like arts and culture is right around 60, 59, 60 years old, new to file. And some of the animal environmental groups are younger at like 67, 68 for a new to file donor. And then when you look at veterans organizations, their donors are even older, 74, 75 at times. But this is where I think there's an opportunity to step back and say, well, if this is the hand that we have, how do we make the most of it? And brainstorm ways of maybe doing different cultivation, different messaging, so on and so forth. But the alarming piece is when we're losing them at 10% and 23% youngest and older part of the silent generation, we've got to fill that hole somewhere, because every year we're going to keep losing more and more of them. And I think that's where another opportunity comes up as to, well, how do we find a slightly younger donor? Or are there other channels that allow us to find younger donors? And I think certainly with digital, display ads, social, influencer marketing, those are opportunities to identify younger. But I also believe that organizations are going to have to look at creating investment opportunities that might have a different measurement stick of what success is.
Such as?
Well, for example, I know I can find you a 65 to 70-year-old donor much less expensive than a 45-year-old donor in direct mail. They respond better. And I also believe, so one of the questions I always like to ask people is, do you think the act of philanthropy or the act of giving money is generational, or is it life stage? And I personally believe it's life stage. My youngest daughter has a big heart, but she doesn't have two nickels to rub together to make a significant contribution to a nonprofit of her choice. She might be a better opportunity for a volunteer role. She'll get there, but I think, and this is where branding is so important, but the reality is the younger generations, the Gen Z and millennials in particular, aren't going to give it the same rate as boomers and the silent generation. They're just not. And then as people postpone the marriage and having children later, they're not going to have any disposable income until they're out of the house and out of college. And I think we maybe see a shifting of disposable income moving even older as our world evolves.
One thing I'm hearing is that the world is gray and it's kind of hard to know what to do when I look at this at face value. For example, you said average donor is 71 in some industries. Well, that probably means that some donors are 50 and others are 85, or just minus 10 plus 10, 61 and
right.
81, right?
That's right.
And I'm also guilty of this. When I will talk to the industry about, let's say, Gen Z or millennials, but the reality is that if I went to a charity and I said, your average donor is 71, how about those people who are 61? What if we brought more of them in? They're not young, but they're younger, and they have a runway in front of them in terms of giving. They have capacity that probably is going to actually increase. This feels more doable. It's less daunting than bringing in someone who's 25 or 35. To your point, it's probably cheaper. It's maybe more profitable. And maybe it's one of those areas where it doesn't seem dramatic enough for me to pay attention, but maybe it is a small consistent step in the right direction because they have a 10-year longer runway than someone who's 71.
Yeah, true.
What are you hearing?
No, I think that's true. Certainly, there are many people that want to get younger.
I wouldn't mind
I would love to get younger at this point.
You and I both. Right? I mean, I'm there with you, by the way.
But in terms of organizations and their donors, they'd love to get younger. And many of their board members would think, well, we should just switch everything to digital fundraising and we'll get all kinds of 25, 35, 45-year-old donors.
Yes.
But this is where giving is not generational, it's life stage, I think.
Right.
Right? And so...
and if I may, I think that's what you're saying, which I think is very profound, that I see this with my kids. And you read about this also in data, that we seem to age later, meaning we're mature later. And maybe we're all shifting towards maturing later and having more disposable income later. And is this what you mean when you say it's by life stage?
That's right. That's right. Well, and at the same time, I do believe, this is my own perspective, I think because of our society and this, I kind of call it like the tipping society, that where we're always asked to tip or add on to the end
Especially
of
in the US, right? In Europe, it's not.
Yeah. But
sure.
you go to the grocery store, they ask you to give to fight hunger. You go and check out and you're asked if you want to give round up to something else, or if you want to add a $5 gift.
Sure.
I think all of that is impacting fundraising. And then the other piece I think that is really impacting fundraising that is difficult to quantify, but I know it's happening, is that many people choose to give locally to help individuals they know through platforms like GoFundMe.
Sure.
Or similar types of things. And that's certainly impacting giving. And we don't measure that kind of giving. And most nonprofits see that type of gift, if they're receiving them, as one line item, because they don't generally get the names of the individual donors. But I would guess if you were to survey the population, there would probably be 90% that would check the box that I'm charitable.
But not in a way that a charity would see.
Right.
Because they're giving money, let's say, if it's I'm giving a couple bucks here and there in tipping, that eats into my budget. And if I'm also sponsoring, I saw something on Reddit the other day about a gentleman who was raising money for, I think it was his wife's cancer treatment. Again, that's eating away from charities.
Yeah.
Charities used to actually get those dollars, and that no longer is the case.
That's right. And donors also, I think, like to see their contributions have an impact locally as well. So you see like local community foundations being bigger now than they ever have been as well. But certainly the landscape's changed. I love the book, The Generosity Crisis, that Nathan Chappell was one of the co-authors of. But the one example that really kind of stuck with me was somebody buying an EV vehicle, a Tesla, who used to make donations to the Sierra Club. And the fact that that donor was now driving an EV, they made that as a perception that they were giving back to the environment, and they stopped giving to the Sierra Club. And I just wonder how many of those instances really happen. And I would guess that it's bigger than we all want to admit.
You shared a bunch of examples of areas, and I think this links to shifts in giving. These shifts you're describing have to correspond with shifts in how the industry goes about giving.
That's right.
And I have on my desk in my office, and I actually made a copy of this for my executive team and also for my kids. And I don't know that my kids really appreciated that. But it's an image of steps. The text goes small, consistent steps, massive outcome. It's like working out, right? I can't expect to get faster, stronger overnight. Right. I just have to put in the reps.
Yeah, there's no magic pill.
There is no magic. And I don't know that in business, whether I am for-profit or non-for-profit, I don't think that there are these brilliant ideas or these, I see this sometimes with clients, another wonderful creative execution. And I think creative is extremely important, but no one thing is a magic bullet.
That's right.
So one silver bullet or bronze bullet maybe.
Sure.
Bronze bullet could be a better analogy that you talked to me about is this idea of we're sort of tripping over ourselves to find pennies, but we forget that there's a bunch of $50 or $100 bills lying around.
We're stepping over 50s and 100s that we might see, we might not see some of them.
What do you mean by this?
Well, let me give you a couple of examples, and I'll also talk a little bit about one of the products that I'm rolling out right now.
Please.
Historically, and even in my agency days, there was a lot of attention placed on the acquisition program. Bigger volumes, creative tended to be a little bit more fun. The audiences and the breadth and depth of audiences was different than working with your RFM on your house file. But we know that the house file generates for most organizations probably 70 or 80% of their gross revenue. I believe there's opportunity to really focus a little bit more attention on the house file and to leverage data in ways that they haven't been able to find the hidden gems that exist within their own file that they just don't know about. And we can do that through data and modeling. And, as a company, Wiland is probably renowned for the audiences we provide for acquisition. And in fact, we're renowned as providing the audiences that generate higher average gifts and also more of the, I got a $10,000 gift today in acquisition. We had somebody that had an organization with a $100,000 gift through direct mail that was, when they traced it back, it was one of our names. As an organization, we just have launched a product that takes all of our database information, the first party, second party, third party data, and we've built variables that map to specific needs within an organization's house file. And part of them are really geared towards that donor journey or the giving pyramid or whatever we want to call it. We can identify people that are more likely to become monthly donors or sustainers. We can identify those people that may have made a gift of $50 to you because that was one of the ask amounts on the on your donation page or on the direct mail reply slip, and they selected that. But we know, because we can look at all of the data, that they might give at a mid-level or even a major gift level. So I can identify some of those people, and when we look at mid-level and major donors, on average, only about 10, 11% of a donor file is capable of making a $1,000 one-time gift. And those giving over $5,000, it's at less than 1%. But the only thing you know when you get a gift from a person, their first gift, is what they responded to, what channel, maybe a payment type, the gift amount, and the date. Well, what happens, Greg, if you make a $100 gift? And what happens if we can leverage data to allow the nonprofit know that Greg is actually capable and has a history of making $5,000 gifts? Well, if an organization knew that kind of information, they could put you into some kind of a specialized cultivation program, probably starting you at the mid-level first, and then ultimately maybe assigning you into the major gift program where there was a relationship manager that was communicating with you one-on-one. But right now, this is an example where we're focused on the pennies, which are abundant on the acquisition side, but they're $50,000, $100,000 bills that we're stepping over. And this is truly where I believe that nonprofits can benefit by using these cultivation indicators, the hidden gems within your file. And we've been very successful in our initial rollout of the product, but even more so today, where you're being asked to raise more with 8 or 10% fewer donors, you need to augment your spend that you're making on every single donor. And by being able to identify who the high-touch opportunities are, it'll give you an opportunity to change the contact cadence and the frequency of those. I think of a new donor, and in most cases, they go through some sort of a welcome series, and then probably for the first year, they get every single appeal. But through data, I can tell you whether they're a likely sustainer. You move them that track. If they're a mid-level person, are they capable of having a donor advised fund because of all the demographic and giving information we have? Well, that would change the equation of your investment during that first year. And instead of waiting 12 months for somebody to self-identify by making another gift, maybe you made your $100 gift and you upped it to $500, well, that would be an indicator. But I have indicators in all of our co-op data that could tell you that a week in, the relationship with that new donor.
This speaks to me in the context of what we spoke about over lunch, which was, you said that we're treating donors the same.
Yeah.
And we also need to move beyond averages, and you wrapped it in the context of content, cadence, or contact, cadence, and frequency.
Yeah.
Just unpack for me and for the audience, what do you mean by these concepts?
When we talk about how a campaign did, we're always looking, we compare things to the average gift, the average response rate, the average cost to acquire, the average cost per dollar raised. That's how it gets rolled up at the bottom of the spreadsheet.
Yes.
Right?
That's the summary.
That's right. But especially if you're having to do more with less, the best thing to do is focus not on the average, but where is your worst dollar being spent? Is it on a particular program? Is it on a particular list within a program? Is it, where is it? If you can find ways to understand what your worst dollar spent is, redirect that to a better ROI or revenue producing investment, that's the way you grow out of this perceived hole. And then the thing about contact, cadence, and frequency, we know through analysis and through very custom modeling that every donor has a seasonality, not only with you, but across their overall giving. And rather than mailing somebody 20 or 25 times because they're in the 0 to 12 or 0 to 24 month segment, leverage some of that seasonality knowledge. And if you're in the first 4 months of the year and they give none of their gifts during that period, well, don't stop mailing them entirely, but instead of 4 campaigns, mail them 3 campaigns or 2 or maybe even 1 campaign, and then bank those dollar savings into your other programs or the areas you want to test in. And I think that's one thing. The other area that I think needs more analysis is just overall marketing attribution. We know that more donors are transacting online than ever before. Well, and who wouldn't transact online today? Because, gosh, good luck finding the checkbook. If you find the checkbook, good luck finding one of those forever stamps. And if you find a forever stamp and you really think about it, you're going to say, wow, 73 or in July, 78 cents to mail back my $25 gift? Heck, I'll just go online. Well, what happens? You Google the name of the organization, you find the sponsored ad, you click on that, and the attribution, last touch,
Sure,
goes to paid search.
absolutely.
Where in effect, organizations that are doing matchbacks are finding about a 30 to 40% lift on the online side, where instead of the 1,000 gifts that they're counting because of the direct attribution to the mail piece, now by doing a matchback and looking at a window of time, instead of 1,000 gifts, it's as much now as 1,300 or 1,400 gifts to that campaign. But the problem is, if you're not doing that matchback, you're undercounting, and your direct mail investment is looking really bad. Sure. And it's going to get worse as time goes on. Whereas we know, or I know, that paid search wasn't the reason for that gift. And essentially, what you've done is you've just added essentially a $5 or $7 service fee on top of that gift.
Which is the cost of the click.
That's right.
I understand.
That's right.
Well, look, that makes sense. And, I used to be on the client side for a number of years. And if you came to me and you said that when I break that sum at the bottom of the spreadsheet, like you said, into low, medium, high, for example, right?
Absolutely.
And I think your point was get rid of the low, put that money somewhere else, bank it, put it somewhere else.
Yeah.
But my response would have been, thanks, Roger, but that money that has the lowest return, it's still creating revenue, and I'm ultimately judged on revenue.
Yeah.
ROAS is important, but not as important as revenue. And even if I'm losing money, and I see this, by the way, with charities right now.
Sure.
They will spend $1 in digital, and maybe make 30 cents back. And it's not that they don't want to do what you're recommending. It's very logical.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they know where else to put that money. Is that stopping them from taking action? Or is it they don't have these averages broken down?
Well,
is it both, or is it also something else?
I think a big part of it is resources as well. Many organizations have cut staff. Many organizations have cut budget. It's hard while you're in the throes, in the depths of managing a program, to be able to step outside of that forest and look strategically on a periodic basis. You know, there's, was it Einstein that said the definition of an insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? And I think it was Henry Ford that said, if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. Well, both of those things ring true in my head. But we're at an inflection point where I think we're going to have to be more creative. Look at things like optimization, certainly looking at channel, contact frequency and cadence. There are certainly new opportunities for people to give. We're at a point where if you keep doing the same thing over and over again with a shrinking pool, it's a downward spiral. But certainly focusing on those hidden gems within your own file or identifying them and then putting marketing programs together to support that are a way. You know, one of the things, I had a conversation earlier today and I said, you know, in one sense, we've been dealt a deck of cards at the same time that we're trying to play another game and get other cards from maybe other games. But take a look at your deck of cards now, your hand, and get creative on things that you can do into the future. Having an aging database is not a bad thing, especially when I look at like all the boomers who are sitting on, not all, but many boomers are sitting on pretty hefty pre-tax accounts like 401ks and IRAs, where they're going to be forced to make minimum distributions.
Yes.
Certainly having a qualified charitable donation as an opportunity, maybe those are things that we should be promoting more. And that's just one example for an aging population. And likewise, like some of those silent generation or even older boomer generation, they're concerned about outliving their money, but their philanthropic heart is still there. And I actually anticipate that more charities are going to be offering charitable gift annuities, where an individual donor can make a large gift, large relative to whoever they are, but a $20,000 charitable gift annuity that pays them out until their death would be very attractive to people that have assets but are concerned about outliving their income.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What I'm hearing you say is that more nuance is needed. Nuance in terms of how these trends are analyzed. So there's more texture to what's happening.
Yes.
And that smells like segmentation and just different products or ways to enable giving that maps to what these donors, and maybe it is about the life stage to your earlier point.
Yeah.
So there's something on nuance per life stage, which doesn't have to exactly align with age.
Yeah.
But the challenge is having that ability internally to see that nuance. And what I'm sensing is that, like, look, obviously charities want to win. Fundraisers want to win, right?
Yeah.
Marketers want to win. We all want to win. We all want
Absolutely.
to have impact. But if I don't see these options, if I don't see these nuances, if I don't see these different shades to my file and ways to engage with them, then I'm operating in averages. And then it's really confusing to know what to do.
Yeah. Well, and you and I talked at lunch about one-to-one marketing.
Yeah.
You know, I started.
The Holy Grail.
I started a long time ago.
Sure.
Even in your early career, we talked about one-to-one marketing, but we're still in one-to-many marketing. But I'm very optimistic because of the ability to merge data and technology platforms with content creation, whether you're using AI or not, generative AI. We are close to the point of making one-to-one communication a reality.
I hope so.
But I also think knowing for an individual donor if you should spend a little bit more time on talking about legacy giving and how easy it is, or juicing up your monthly sustainer conversion program. I think, somebody that converts from a one-time to a monthly sustainer is probably worth 5 or 6 donors. So converting one person to a sustainer, an existing donor, takes a lot of pressure off of your acquisition file, right? And your need to acquire more donors. But this is where truly leveraging the data, mapping them to a higher value, higher LTV program, sustainers, mid-level, major, and ultimately legacy giving, I think is how we need to start manipulating our house file marketing. And then certainly channels, multi-channel, integrated campaigns. We know from doing co-targeting of display ads that it lifts performance. And, if you're spending 60 cents on a direct mail piece, you could easily spend 5 or 6 cents with multiple impressions using display advertising that will more than pay for that 6-cent investment through the lift that you're going to get.
Shifting gears,
Sure.
I have a question that I wrote down. I want to make sure I don't mess it up, so I'll read it. What is it that you know about all of these systemic changes in the giving pyramid that you know today that you wish you knew at the start of your career? Would your career have been different had you known X years ago what you know today? What would you have done?
That's a great question. I think that our industry has evolved. And as things evolve, we have to be reactionary to certain things. But it would be nice to be more proactive about things. There are things that are going to be out of our control. The cost of paper. It's probably never going to go down, mainly because paper mills and paper producers have hit that equilibrium between supply and demand. Postal rates. We've had a huge increase in postal rates. It should be announced in June that we're going to get a July 13th increase that's likely going to be around 11%. Well, what that equates to is roughly a 4 to 5% reduction in volume, because that 11% increase is on something that's, 35 to 40% of the cost of a package. And so those are things that we can't control. Back to your question, if I knew then what I know now, I don't know the answer. I mean, I certainly think I see today data bias impacting our ability to create audiences.
And what do you mean by data bias?
Yeah, so data bias, it means that we're modeling off of the same data pool. The data pool is shrinking a little bit.
So no
last
new fresh,
2 years.
no new fresh blood, so to speak.
And then the other part is that our models are getting so smart. We're able to find donors more effectively. But the challenge is, how do we broaden that reach to find donors beyond our existing core audiences that allow us to find more donors that might be younger, but might cost us 50% more to acquire. But theoretically, that has to be part of our strategic plan, because if we keep doing the same thing, well, in another 10 years, the silent generation is long gone. And now we're talking about same thing with baby boomers as what we're saying about the silent generation today.
Well, that will probably require changing the rules of engagement, so to speak, when it comes to that acquiring of those younger donors. They'll have to be kind of held, fundraising or marketing will have to be held accountable to different standards, different ROI standard, maybe.
Yeah, could be.
Maybe.
Could be. But, Greg, I still believe that, going back to like the philosophy classes in college, I still believe that man is basically good. And we saw that.
Always, by the way, I always believe that.
Yeah. And we saw that during COVID. The significant increases in giving that occurred during COVID was very comforting. When so many of our citizens, friends, family were having difficulty, the whole nation pulled together to help those of our neighbors, but those across the world. And so still, one of my concerns is, gosh, I don't know that we all knew that there was so much money in our federal budget that was going to international relief things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, the question is, how are we as a society going to make up for those reductions or cuts if we want the rest of the world to be sustainable and not suffer?
That's a great question to finish on. Roger Hiyama, Executive Vice President, Solutions and Innovation at Wiland. Roger, thank you so much. I am walking away optimistic because you have shed light on the fact that when we peel the onion on data, there are hidden opportunities right under the surface. And in full transparency, I am very much glass half full, as I shared earlier.
Yeah.
So I always look at it this way. What you shared makes that more believable.
Well, thank you. And thanks for asking me to participate in the podcast. Thank you.